Austin Gayle from 2-for-1 Drafts podcast with us. We're talking about the Penn State football players to watch for in 2021, guys that PFF is interested in. Of course, we talked a little bit about Sean Clifford, and that's what everyone wants to know. So I keep getting asked, is Sean Clifford good? And, looking at his tape, the answer I think is obvious, but then can he be good is a different question.
He has not been a quarterback that has played well above expectation to the point where he can compete in the Big Ten or for a national title. You look at this past season, just a 60.9 PFF passing grade, only 5 big-time throws. And big-time throws at PFF are these highly graded throws, these rare throws that you see down the football field. Only 1.9% of his attempts this past year were big-time throws, those highly positively graded throws. That's a concern. Meanwhile, turnover-worthy play rate has maintained over 3% over the past 2 seasons. Not where you want to be.
Yeah.
Not only is he conservative, not only is he missing on some of these bigger, longer distance throws, but he's also turning the ball over at a clip that you don't want to see, especially for a quarterback that is as conservative as he is. A 9.3 average depth of target this past season. They are not asking him to be Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, but at a certain point, if you want this offense to have significant success, he needs to push the ball downfield. He needs to find ways to move that. And I think you look at this past season too, he had 3 big-time throws against Indiana. After that, he only had 1 for the rest of the season. That, again, is a huge concern. He needs to be more consistent, pushing the ball downfield with success.
Yeah, and a lot of those too were late in games where the game was already gone. So what's there to do but risk it? So you mentioned the average depth of target and the conservatism of the offense last year. Mike Yurcich brought in this offseason to fix that. I don't know how much you've studied his offenses or just the Big 12 offenses in depth, but what can he do? What can the offense do to tease that sort of more aggressiveness and downfield passing out of Sean Clifford? How can you get to a position where Clifford is a guy that can get you somewhere?
I do think it is, you can't afford, there are limitations with Sean Clifford, but you can't afford to let them limit your offense and force your offense to be more conservative. Like, you need to chase explosive plays. I was talking to PJ Fleck, I think yesterday or the day before, about his approach to the RPO heavy offense. They run RPOs at the highest rate of any Power 5 team in the NFL. And a lot of it is that they feel they can chase explosive plays, a high percentage of completions with RPOs. And they do. I mean, it's an offense that has been explosive, even with Tanner Morgan, a guy that isn't one of the top quarterbacks in the Big Ten compared to Michael Penix and some of these other guys. I do think they need to find creative ways to go get those explosive plays. Because if it's not going to come from Sean Clifford and you're going to kind of put the training wheels on him and not ask him to push the ball downfield, I mean, you look down the stretch, average depth of targets in single games are under 7 for a lot of those games down the stretch. Like, he is not pushing the ball downfield. And that's fine. If you don't want to do that, if you want to put the training wheels on Sean Clifford, that's fine. But you need to get creative elsewhere to go get those explosive plays. Because if you're not gaining chunk yardage at the collegiate level or at the NFL level, it can become so difficult to sustain drives and put up enough points to win.
Yeah, and last year, I've brought up this stat before on the show. The only team that had more designed quarterback runs than Penn State last year, if you combine Sean Clifford and Will Levis, was Army. So it was rough football to watch for Penn State football fans. I think that there's going to be a clear difference in that. And the question is just, can Sean Clifford operate the offense? There are times it looks like he's a quarterback. And if you talk to him, he's a guy that I think knows all the answers. I think he knows all the football answers. It's just literally translating them to the field is a huge thing for Sean, because it's post-snap, what is he seeing? Does he know what he's seeing? And how does he adjust? When it comes to first and second reads, for quarterbacks in college, how rare or common is it for guys to get to that second read and to have that maturity about them with as much training wheels as there is in college football, with some, all the screens and design throws and things like that?
I think it's rare. It reminds me of a conversation I had with JT O'Sullivan, who does a lot of good work on YouTube with his QB school and also as a former quarterback in the NFL. And he talks about there are some guys, some quarterbacks, whether it's at the collegiate level or the NFL level, that have it. They have that mental capability, that capacity to take more. And the guys that you can just keep throwing plays at and keep throwing progressions at, and they can just continue to take it. And there's others where you don't have that, where there isn't that capability, that mental capacity to handle that workload or that play count load or whatever it may be. I think it's up to Penn State to identify that with Sean Clifford. If he is a guy that can handle more, getting more creative with the playbook and getting more creative with what his strengths are, I think makes sense. But if he's not, then you do have to simplify this offense. You do have to do a lot of QB runs and that type of stuff to, again, grind out some of these points and try and make some plays.
Yeah, and that's to me that's a big thing when you're leaning on the QB run game. It's a crutch. It's something that you're doing because you can't operate higher concepts and things like that. So reshaping the quarterback roster is something that Penn State's been trying to do for a couple years. I mean, they were in on Justin Fields early, and then you see when you don't get a guy like that, where you end up.